Okay, we've installed the core X Windows system, and I want to show you some features of the X Windows system that make it a little different than maybe if you're familiar with certainly using Windows or the Mac. Um, the X Windows system actually has some interesting features. So I've opened up a cygwin command window, and I'm going to start the X Windows server just by typing XWIN and then an ampersand to run it in the background. And this opens up the X window display screen. So this would be the background window for any X applications that I run. This is X Windows actually uses a client server architecture. Um, in this video, we'll run both the server, which is this display, this background window that you see here now, and the clients actually on the same system, but they can actually be run on different systems, and I'll show you that in a future video. Right now I've got this display window, background window open. I have no actually uh, menus available, no way to apparently to actually start any applications. Let me switch back to my cygwin window. You'll see when I started up the X Windows uh, uh, system that it displayed a bunch of information actually to the cygwin window. So the first thing I want to try is actually open up an Xterm terminal window. And so type that, and it says it can't open the display. And we can actually run these applications, their X Windows clients actually, and have them send their graphical output to any display on the network. A local display is no exception. I need to tell it where to actually display its graphics, and I do that by setting the display environment variable, and I just set that equal to, in this case, :0.0, which represents the local display. And then now I'll start up Xterm. I'm going to run this in the background, and then now let me go back to my X window system, and I've got an X terminal window running here now. One thing that's a little different about at least this basic setup is that if I start typing commands, nothing actually appears in the window unless the mouse is over the window. So now I can type in additional commands, but if I move my mouse cursor out of the window and I type, the input isn't sent to the window. This is a focusing system that's called focus follows mouse, and it's a little different than probably any window focusing systems that you're used to, which use click on focus, where I click on the on a window to make it the active window. Let me start up an application here. X Eyes. It's kind of a interesting application. I'll run it in the background. Notice this X Eyes application opens up a simple application where the pupils of the eyes actually follow my mouse pointer around the screen. Notice in this basic setup, I've got no way actually to move any of these windows. Again, I still don't have any background menus. I do have menus available on my X Windows system, but I can't move any of these windows around. Let me actually kill that XI system. What I can do is actually use, most clients support an option, the geometry option, where I can place, start up different X clients at a particular position on my background. And it understands negative, so if I do negative 0, plus 0, it'll actually wrap around to the minus X window, and minus 0 plus 0 is actually in the upper right of my screen. So if I start that up there, you'll see Xeyes appears now in the upper right. You know, I can start up an X term. Again, if I start it up right here, it will actually start right over the previous X terminal window, and I have no way to actually switch between them. So let me just exit out of this, but I can start it up in a different location. If I use minus 0, minus 0, that's actually going to be in the lower right-hand portion of the screen. Let me show you how I can exit out of all of these clients. A couple other ways to actually shut down the system at this point is just click the X in the background window, or back here on the, I'll have actually an icon in my Windows taskbar where if I right click on that, I can just choose to exit the X Windows system. Let me close it in this case just by clicking on the X. It tells me that I've got 3 clients connected, the 2 X terms and the Xeyes application. I'm just going to go ahead and shut down. Another option you have with the X Windows system is I can actually run it full screen. I should mention that this is X Windows as ported to the Windows system via cygwin, so I can run this full screen. I got a full-blown X Windows background here. Again, no way to actually start applications or clients with any sort of menu, so I have to go back to my cygwin window and start up an X terminal window, and then actually switch back to my X terminal. There we go. And I or my X background window, and I see my X terminal system. So not exactly a user-friendly system with this basic setup. The reason for that is most X Windows systems will be running a special client known as the X Window Manager, and it's the window manager that provides a lot of features with regard to clients, with particular drawing borders around client applications that allow me to move windows around, so on and so forth. So let me do Control-8, Control-Escape to get to my Windows background, and then again right click and choose Exit now to shut down the X Windows system as I've started it. So now let me show you some of the other little more user-friendly systems. I'm going to first run the default display manager, which is known as TWM, and I'm going to come down to my cygwin X menu and click on user script. And so this will start up the X Windows server, and then it automatically starts up a couple of applications for me. I've got an X clock and an X term window. Notice now when I move the mouse pointer over the window, the title bar actually changes to show me that that window has focus, and so it will now accept the input that I type. This is actually a feature of this windowing manager that I'm using that's called TWM, and I can click on the background and I get a menu here where I can actually start up another X term window. I can resize these things, move them around by grabbing onto the title bar, move around my X clock. I can start up other applications. We'll see that Xeyes now actually has a title bar as well. Again, you may not want that for an application like Xeyes, and you can configure, TWM is configurable so that I can actually eliminate that title bar if I want. So let me just Control-C to kill Xeyes. So now I've got something that's a little more user-friendly. At least I've got a menu on the background. Now the way I'm going to exit my system, since I've running the window manager, is actually exit from the window manager, and then that will automatically kill my X Windows background system. Okay. Now the cygwin X Windows has an additional feature under the cygwin X, and it's called this. It's available via this other menu shortcut called X11 Server, and this actually presents kind of an integrated um, X Windows display system, where now instead of seeing my X Windows background window, I actually will come down here and via a special client taskbar entry, I'll be able to start up other X Windows applications that are actually integrated right into my Windows background system. So let me see what else I have available. I've got Emacs. So that starts up my Emacs. Now it should mention this is an X Windows client application, but the X server window is actually hidden. But this is the X version of Emacs. If I click on open, I'll see a normal Unix directory tree, home AR63, and then I can go up to my root directory and so on and so forth. I can actually start up the Windows version of Emacs, and it looks very similar to the X Windows version, but now if I go to the open, I see my normal actually Windows directory tree with all my Windows drives and so on and so forth. So again, this is a Windows port of the Emacs editor. So, and again, I can close down this from this second icon. I've got two icons down here, one for the X server window, which I could shut down, and then another one from this other application, this special window manager that's running, and I can just choose exit from there to actually close down my X Windows system. In the next video, I'll show you how to run a complete desktop environment that is a little more like what you'll see on a typical modern Linux system, where the desktop environment provides things like a task menu bar and a startup menu and some things like that. What makes, again, Linux a little different from Windows is you actually have a choice of a number of different desktop environments that you can install and run under X Windows. So again, we'll cover that in the next video.